I've worked at a few places, and when I had the opportunity to join Yelp, my wife said to me, finally, you're going to do something worthwhile. It was a good reminder that as a PM, even when you're passionate about product, you're not just designing for your own use case. Search metrics is like fell off a cliff. It's like, what is going on here? Obviously, trust is at the core of everything that we do. People come to Yelp because they believe, rightly so, that content on our platform is based on authentic human experiences. The subtle part of the trust, which we also work very, very hard to build and keep, is making sure that we satisfy the fullness of the consumer intent. Consumers come to Yelp with a goal in mind.
What is the biggest failure that you made at Yelp, and how did you grow up from there?
Hey, this is Carlos's AI voice clone. Carlos is the CEO of Product School and the host of the Product Podcast. He asked me to set the stage for today's guest before he takes over the interview. Craig Saldanha is the Chief Product Officer at Yelp. Craig is back by popular demand after delivering one of the most loved presentations at our ProductCon conference. Yelp is the world's largest marketplace connecting people with local businesses through authentic reviews. Founded in San Francisco in 2004, it went public in 2012 and has a market capitalization of over $2.6 billion, while also remaining profitable as of January 2025. From a product standpoint, Yelp leverages over 287 million user reviews as of December 2023. During our conversation, Craig shares fascinating insights on how committing to remote work attracts top talent for product teams, designing the product org to serve both sides of the marketplace, creating flywheels within your product, and harnessing AI for user-generated content platforms to reduce friction while maintaining authenticity. As a fun fact, you will love Craig's experience using Yelp to plan his first date with his now wife. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the show, Craig.
Thank you for having me, Carlos. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you now on a podcast setting, because last time you participated at Product School, you were a speaker at our ProductCon AI conference.
That was great, by the way. Congratulations. Lots of positive feedback, and a couple of my friends attended and really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Craig, one of the things I can't wait to ask is about Yelp and how you planned your first date on Yelp with your now wife.
Oh my goodness, yes. I'll just start by saying this. I've worked at a few places, and when I had the opportunity to join Yelp, my wife said to me, finally, you're going to do something worthwhile. It's like, I've been in the industry for 20 years. Like, this is the point at which you think my life is finally worthwhile. But the context is, my wife is a big foodie, has always been. She values both the fine dining as well as that small hole in the wall, the mom and pop shop where there's just a family behind a counter. And I have always been, I love sports. I love to geek out on various things. I'm not a big foodie. And so when we first started dating, I had to try to impress her, right? Like, this woman loves to eat out, blah, blah, blah. And I have no idea, the extent of my food adventures were IHOP and Chipotle. Like those are my staples. Nothing against them. I still enjoy those restaurants. But anyway, so I was very much dependent on Yelp. I picked a really nice restaurant, actually, Papa Hayden. It's based in Portland, Oregon, which is where I was at the time. And our date went really well. She was impressed, but that was not the extent of how I used Yelp. For me, fine dining was a very new experience, and there's as I've now learned, chefs take a lot of pride in picking names and describing their dishes. And I remember looking at the menu for the first time, and I have no idea, like, is this chicken? Is this pork? Like, the names are so fancy. I have no idea what's going on. And so I like opening the Yelp app and reading the Yelp reviews, because like the last thing I want to do is order something that I don't eat and then be on this first day. But anyway, I'm gonna work out. She is now my wife, and we still use Yelp. We have 2 kids now who are both very picky eaters. And so I think I am the biggest user of our intelligent search function, because I need to know, like, a place that will do mac and cheese just exactly the right way with not too much cheese. So I started using Yelp, way back in like 2006, 2007, and have been like a power user ever since.
Yeah, and you joined the company around almost 3 years ago, right?
I did. Yeah, I joined Yelp right after the pandemic when Yelp was fully remote. I had been at Amazon for almost 10 years, and the opportunity to work on something that had been such a big part of my life for so long and it helped me meet my wife was like very compelling.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about Amazon before Yelp, because I think that must be really relevant as you spent almost 10 years there, especially in marketplaces. Tell me a little bit more about what are some of those learnings and how you were able to apply them to your current experience.
Yeah, I had a great career at Amazon. I started in Kindle way back in 2012, right when the first Kindle Fire tablet came out, and um, uh, I had a chance to work on two really compelling marketplaces. First, I worked on Kindle, which is a two-sided marketplace, has authors on one side and readers on the other side. And then I launched Kindle Unlimited, which was Amazon's foray into subscriptions. This was when Netflix and Spotify were still small, and people were debating whether subscriptions were like going to be a big thing. So, we can chat about that. That was a really cool experience. And then in 2016, I moved over uh, to help take the Prime Video product international, and I worked there for 4 or 5 years. And that's a very different two-sided marketplace. There's content creators on one side, so movie houses, independent studios, etc., and there's viewers on the other side. But what's very different about all three marketplaces, and I work at Yelp, where there's local businesses on one side and consumers on the other side. Uh, and I'll share some of the learnings because there's a lot in common across two-sided marketplaces, but there's a lot different as well, right? Kindle is monetized directly. People write books, other people buy them, and there's an exchange. Prime Video actually had no direct revenue. There was content that we paid for, and then people signed up for Prime memberships and bought shoes. And that's how Amazon made like money overall, right? There was no like direct um, revenue component. And then at Yelp, we essentially monetized through ads. So, for me, I think there's 4 or 5 big learnings, which like maybe obvious to some folks, but that make marketplaces, and especially two-sided marketplaces, unique. First is the needs of the marketplace or the needs of the two sides of the marketplace are often at conflict with each other. So, just as an example, uh, authors will want to make a fair price for their book. That's their art. They've put their life story into it sometimes. Consumers want to read the most books for the cheapest amount of money, and that's their goal. And so that can be in conflict. And so the first piece is really understanding the needs of your marketplace, but more importantly, developing a framework for how you will resolve that conflict. And so at Amazon, you always resolve conflict in favor of the customer. Amazon is famous for its customer obsession. At Yelp, we really treat both sides of the marketplace equally. We always look for the win-win scenario for both end consumers as well as local businesses, even if that means that Yelp is disadvantaged in the short term, because we believe that the win-win is what will drive most value to the marketplace. So the first is, just know the needs, understand that there's going to be conflict, prepare for conflict by having a robust framework. The second piece is understanding that your marketplace is a flywheel, and it will accelerate only when both sides of the marketplace are being benefited. And so, for folks who are not uh, familiar with the flywheel concept who are maybe listening to the podcast, the flywheel is just, you think of your business as this big wheel, and you have various levers that you can get to start spinning the wheel. And essentially, you want to get all of the levers spinning the wheel in the same direction. And so for Yelp, consumers come to Yelp because we have a phenomenal selection of great local businesses. And they can, most of the time, or always find what they're looking for across a broad range of categories. And that brings more local businesses to Yelp because there's consumers on Yelp who are searching for local businesses who have high intent. And that brings more consumers who then write more reviews, which brings more local businesses. And that's how the flywheel accelerates. And I think that's important because two-sided marketplaces really succeed because of their scale. And if you can't generate scale on both sides of the marketplace, you're not going to find product market fit. And I think that was something that, really dawned on me because, when I launched the Kindle Unlimited subscription service, there was a cold start problem. It's a new product. How do you get folks in the door, and understanding that and having a plan for that is very important. There's two more, which I think are often overlooked. One is know how you're going to monetize, even if you choose not to monetize right away. I think a lot of folks are so focused on finding product market fit, which is obviously important, that they don't think about how to monetize. They focus on growth. And sometimes when you grow too big, you're forced into certain monetization models. But if you think through it from the start, maybe you give yourself more options. And then, the last one, for me at least, is for most PMs, you put so much of effort into building a proof of concept or minimum lovable product or, your first launch. And especially as a junior PM, you attach so much of value to how the first launch does. Is it gonna get a bunch of consumers? Is it gonna, are you gonna sign up both sides of the marketplace? Are you going to achieve product market fit? And I found that very often you have to make multiple tweaks, and sometimes it takes the last tweak to fall in place for your product to actually find product market fit. And so, launching is important, but that iteration and, getting to the right, exactly the right product is important.
So if we use the example of Yelp, if we were to dissect it, what would be some of those leading indicators that are telling you that the product is getting enough traction on both sides of the marketplace?
Yeah, the wonderful part about the Yelp ecosystem is people come to Yelp and they trust Yelp, I think, for three reasons. The first is the depth of our content. People write these really amazing reviews. They're not just a few sentences, they're deep. They talk about the atmosphere. If it's a restaurant, it talks about the dishes. If it's a service provider, it talks in very great detail about the job. The second is the breadth of categories. So you can come to Yelp for a restaurant, you can come for a plumber, a roofer, a dog groomer, etc. And then, the third is the network of local businesses that we have. We have folks who are very, very responsive. You can make a reservation, you can order takeout, but you can also get a quote from a plumber all in the same place. And so to answer your question, the advantage that I think that we have as PMs working at Yelp is consumers tell us very quickly with their actions, and businesses tell us very quickly with their wallets whether we're achieving their goals or not. And so we can tell based on whether a consumer satisfied their intent and went all the way through the funnel, and whether they're coming back, whether they're interested in the new product or feature that we launched. And businesses, we have a bunch of feedback channels, but if they're increasing their presence on Yelp, and if they're not an advertiser and they become an advertiser, or if they are an advertiser, if they increase their spend, etc., we can tell the value that we're delivering almost instantaneously. I'd say, like within days to weeks.
Yeah, so I get that from the business standpoint because you can measure with their wallet, as you said. But I'm just curious about the user part, because in some cases, they might go to your platform to check out some reviews, find something, but maybe they don't end up with a transaction there. However, that doesn't mean that they weren't successful. So I wonder if there's any other type of metrics that are important to you to ensure that there is value for the user.
Yeah. So let's just break down how we think about the user journey, and then we can talk through how we measure how fast the user got through their journey. So at a very, very high level, I think most users go through 4 stages to connect with a local business. The first is search, and this can be very broad. I can come searching for a plumber, or I can come searching for how to fix a leak and not know that I actually need a plumber. I might actually need a roofer. So, the first is search. The second is evaluate, which is, you get all of the search results. Recently I was searching for, my wife wants to build a gazebo in our backyard. And I'm like, do I call like a carpenter? Do I call a landscaper? Like how do I figure this out? And so, the second stage is really, you see the search results, you have to kind of evaluate. What are the 3 or 4 businesses that I think I want to explore further? The third stage is decide. And so this is, I've narrowed my choice to maybe 1 or 2 businesses. I look at the photos, I look at the reviews, and then the last stage is basically connect. I either call them, I send them a message, I use our request a quote flow, etc. So for us, the successful conclusion of the customer journey is really making a connection between a consumer and a local business. And so if we make a connection, no matter what the connection was, whether it was a visit to the page, if it was a phone call, if it was a request a quote, we essentially measure how many user journeys end in connections, and that's a successful experience. Whether it's monetized or not, that's secondary. What's important is that we fulfill the consumer's search intent. But we can also take that back every stage. Let's say they narrowed down businesses. So they clicked into a couple of businesses. Maybe it was not what they were looking for. Then we know that their search ended at the decision phase. If they just went to the search page, they typed in, like if I typed, gazebo, and it showed me a bunch of things, and I didn't really click on any because I didn't think that they were the right fit, then we know that, maybe that part of the flow needs to be tweaked because we didn't give the consumer what they're looking for. So at every phase, we know whether the consumer moves to the next phase or not. And our goal is to really drive connections between consumers and local businesses.
So one of the things that I find fascinating about product executives is that sometimes their product is not just what the users see, it's also their team and how you design it in a way that is effective. So in your case, I'm curious to know how you structure it. Is it based on stages of the user life cycle? Is it the breakdown by categories, or what's your rationale behind structuring your team?
Yeah. So, before I answer that question, I'll just say, I think team structure is important, but what is more important to me, at least, and other product leaders might think differently, is culture and decision-making frameworks. Because I think if everybody has the same basic mental models for how we want to treat consumers and how we want to make them feel, and how we want to treat local businesses and how we want to make them feel, and then we have a set of decision-making frameworks for how to think about problems in order to deliver that value, then I think organizing the team is important, but it becomes less important because everybody is focused on the same goals. And so we actually spend a ton of time, before we even write a PEP, we have what's called a framework review, which is just for the PMs, engineers, and some of the product leaders and designers to sit in a room and talk through what are all of the hypotheses they have, what are all the assumptions they have, and what are all the outcomes that they're trying to drive, and how do they think they can drive those outcomes based on those assumptions and hypotheses. And then we all align on that. And once we're all aligned on the same framework, then they go off and they write the PEP, and the engineers understand exactly what we're trying to build, and they can interpret the PEP, etc. So with all of that said, well, I've organized the team to focus to have a big chunk of folks focus on consumers, so they can obsess about the consumer experience, the app experience, the sign up experience, the search experience, the review writing experience, and they're just obsessed about consumers. I've got a team that's focused just on local businesses, and I like that because they can focus just on local businesses, and this is intended to drive some small amount of conflict. Because remember, at the start I said for two-sided marketplaces, you want to have a little bit of conflict, and you want to have a framework for resolving that conflict. And so I really like that we have a team that's obsessed about consumers, a team that's obsessed about local businesses, and we have really robust frameworks on how to resolve conflict. And then we have smaller teams which are focused on delivering value to advertisers. We have a trust and safety team because authenticity is really at the core of everything that we do. And then we have a restaurant software product, front of house product that helps restaurants with table seating, reservations, all of that. And so we have a team for that. But the pillars of Yelp, we're really organized around the two sides of our marketplace.
Got it. And I heard you use the word frameworks quite a bit. So I'm curious to know, what are some of the specific frameworks that you use to kind of resolve conflict between your teams?
Teams at the start of the year will get goals, and goals tell us what the finish line looks like. And we want frameworks to tell us how to get there. And so at the product org level, I wrote down 5 or 6 very core principles that are meant to help PMs make the right judgment call whenever they're faced with options. So let me tell you a couple. The first is customer obsession, and here this applies to both local businesses as well as consumers. And our primary goal is to delight both sides of our marketplace, and we always look for the win-win. And in rare instances where there's conflict, we seek to drive very high judgment decisions through escalation. So whenever in the rare instance that there's conflict, the conflict comes to me, and I have the opportunity to weigh in. The second is decision making. We want to move very quickly through two-way doors and very slowly and thoughtfully through one-way doors. This is a Jeff Bezosism.
You took that from Amazon.
I did. I actually really like it. So like a two-way door is a decision like an A/B test, where you can roll it out and you can pull it back, and it's not like a big deal. Like a one-way door is something like pricing, where if you change your decision later on, some consumer or local businesses is basically going to feel some pain. So we want to make decisions fast, and this is something that we emphasize. I'll actually ask the team, this feels like a two-way door. Why are we talking about this? Or this is a one-way door decision, and I don't feel like you have all of the data. So it's something that we use in our day-to-day as well. The third is we build for scale and longevity, which essentially means that we think about things like tech architecture and tech debt as much as we think about features and launching features fast. And this one is easier said than done. Having been a PM for like a long time, anything that's not delivering value to customers directly, you're always reticent to prioritize that. And we want our PMs to recognize that our product's been around 20 years. It's going to be around for another 20 years. And so we have to build with that scale and longevity in mind. And then, the last two are based on diversity and inclusion. We have a very diverse customer base, and we want our PMs to really remember that when they're designing products. And we also want them to be unafraid of failure. So we have a tenet around think big and fail fast, which essentially means we welcome failure for the learnings that it brings, but we only like to fail once. We like that learning. We like to propagate that learning to the organization and essentially make that a win. So that's our framework for how we think about our product overall. But then every individual feature has their own set of tenets, and we spend time, essentially debating those tenets so that we can all approach the actual design of the product with the same set of mental models. Does that make sense? Or does that sound?
Thank you for sharing. I love that moment of literally sharing the screen and going through the actual docs that you use for building, because that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Good. Okay.
Now I want to put you on the spot a little bit and talk about marketplace risks and how you go about either mitigating or resolving them completely. I heard you talk about how trust is a core element of your product. So obviously there are millions of users, and I wonder how you go about ensuring that there is the trust, the right measurements for trust and safety within the platform.
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, trust is at the core of everything that we do. People come to Yelp because they believe, rightly so, that the content on our platform is based on authentic human experiences. And so we spend a lot of time developing tools and infrastructure to make sure that we can, as we put it, protect the source. And so that's everything from verifying that users are authentic, preventing bot traffic, preventing protecting local businesses from inappropriate messages, hate messages, all of that. We have a team, and we've built technology over the past 20 years to really focus on that piece. So that's the obvious part. You come to Yelp, you believe it's authentic content, make sure that it's authentic. That's the core of everything that we do. The more subtle consumer trust piece is consumers come to Yelp with a goal in mind. The goal is to eat, to find a plumber, to fix a leak, to get a car fixed, etc. And the subtle part of the trust, which we also work very, very hard to build and keep, is making sure that we satisfy the fullness of the consumer intent. So, you can come to Yelp to find a doctor, you can come to Yelp to find an accountant, you can come to Yelp to find a plumber. And the experience that we offer you must be consistent. You must be able to have the same depth of content. You must be able to trust that the reviews are authentic, but also that the basic information like address and phone number is up to date. If a place is closed down, we have to show it is closed. And so we think about the whole user journey and how we're satisfying their intent, and we try to protect every stage of that journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was reading a report from the Global Economic Forum, and they said that the number one threat in the world right now is the use of AI for misinformation, and how that can accelerate the spreading of just false information across media and other platforms. So I wonder if you've noticed any specific spikes and how you are now leveraging AI to also, solve these problems.
Yeah. So what's interesting there's two really interesting things I think about the applications of AI to Yelp. First, like you're pointing out, people come to Yelp for authentic human experiences, and if they're getting authentic software experiences instead, that's a really bad thing. And so we have put a lot of effort into both our guidelines, but also our technology to detect AI written our reviews, etc., it is against our policy, and we do take those reviews down. And it's going to be an ongoing game. The tools will get better. Our detection will have to get better. But like I said, it's something we've been doing for protecting our source is something we've been doing for 20 years, and so we'll continue to do that.
I think
Sorry,
one of the things that as a user of the product I've noticed is that people in general tend to use those marketplaces to share bad experiences instead of all the good experiences, right? It's almost like a good experience is a given. I'm only going to go online to complain. So how do you go about treating those cases to make sure that users can have a more realistic view of the local business that they are trying to learn from?
I'm sure that I'm biased, but so I'll try to quote an independent study. But there's an independent study that was done that essentially showed that of all the review sites, Yelp's reviews are more evenly balanced. So while a lot of folks on other sites tend to leave 1 and 5-star reviews, Yelp has a nice histogram which shows that folks leave reviews across experiences. Sorry, across their breadth of experiences, where I was delighted, I was happy, but not I'm ecstatic. There were some things that were wrong, or I didn't have a good experience. But for us, what we really want is for folks to have an authentic experience that they want to share. And we have a phenomenal user base, and we really lean into the altruistic nature. People want to leave reviews because they want to help other folks. This is why Yelp has for a long time taken such a strong stance against review solicitation. Because when people solicit reviews, when businesses or channel partners or somebody solicits a review, they have the opportunity to only pick the best reviews and publish them. And so we don't allow that at all. We have tools, etc., that help us protect the source. But I think that helps a lot when people are inspired to leave a review with the goal of helping other people. I think you'll see that you basically get that distribution.
Yeah, and it's also like I see this as a lever where you, on the one hand, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to just say, hey, I had an experience. Hopefully it's a good one. At the same time, you want to get as much data as possible about how was that experience. You mentioned before, you want to learn more about the ambience and music and other situations. So from a product standpoint, how do you go about getting enough people to share and kind of not turn them too far so they can at least submit a review?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing I'm very proud of, and I'm sure there'll be listeners on your podcast who will disagree with me, but Yelp has there's a few product decisions that we made early on in the product that really help with the quality of the reviews. We never allowed just a star rating. We encourage people to actually write a review before we publish their star rating, which essentially did away with people like you're saying, right? Who they're pissed off, they want to leave like a 1-star review, but it's not helpful to the local business because they don't know why. We have a minimum character count, and we don't publish a review. We save it for you. We save it in draft form, but we wait for you to write something that's actually meaningful before we post it to the site. And now, just if I may, going back to your earlier question about AI, the really cool part about AI and specifically LLMs is Yelp is a text-based platform. We have so much of text and so much of natural language that the ability that LLMs give us to process natural language in a way that feels precise and personal is, just opens a whole new set of doors for us. And so now for our reviews, I don't know when the last time you left for a review was, but I would encourage you to go write a review. You'll see that we have these nudges. We have an AI agent, which is understanding what you're typing, and it will kind of like give you a small prompt. Yeah, you talked about the ambience. You haven't talked about the food yet. Okay, you talked about the ambience and the food. You haven't talked about the service yet. And so we're able to process what the user is typing and give them a nudge on, maybe these are the other things that you want to share. And, user seems to find that very helpful.
I love that. Definitely going to check it out and write a review, Craig, about our podcast interview.
You're like, I want to review your CPO.
Well, I have two more marketplace risks that I want to address with you. One is the skipping the platform challenge, right? Like classic situation, user makes a connection with a local business or a pro, and then what? How do you create enough value so both players want to continue doing the transaction within the marketplace?
So the first and the most obvious is you want to get takeout, and you basically come to Yelp, you order through Yelp, we're done, right? Like you've placed your order, we'll help you fulfill the order, but then you have to go to the restaurant and pick it up. Maybe the second example is I just went through this. You want to have an oil change or like do an oil change in your car. You're looking for like a good place, and you find the place, you call them, you make the appointment, that's your connection, and like then you're done. But I think the essence of your question was, one of the really cool things about Yelp is with our request a quote. Let's say that we just bought an EV and we had to put a charger, and our house was built in the 60s. So like this is not a very simple like you plug it into the wall. We had to like route stuff to our attic. And anyway, so one of the nice things about Yelp is I come to Yelp with a need, and I know that I'm going to have to call a few folks, but instead I just used our request a quote flow, and I get multiple quotes for a single job. So I don't have to go and do comparison shopping. And so on the consumer side, it's quite easy to show the value, right? If as a consumer you chose to take your conversation off platform, then you'd have to call 5 individual folks, and then they'd call you back, and you'd miss some folks. Whereas if you continue to use the Yelp platform, Yelp picks up all of the replies, organizes them in your projects tab, so you can see what everybody quoted you, and it's a very simple. We kind of bold and put it at the top. This was your quote. So person A quoted $200. Person B was $220, but they're available on Wednesday. So for the consumer, the value is clear. For the business, I think you just have to make sure that the incentives are aligned. So for businesses, they just want good high intent leads. And if you give them good high intent leads, they're very willing to pay for them, and they're very willing to engage in a way that's most convenient to the consumer. And so we do a lot of work qualifying the leads. So we ask the consumer a bunch of questions about their jobs. We give all of that information to the pros or the local businesses, so they can decide if they want the lead or not. They're charged only when they respond to the consumer. And so by giving them that option of saying, you know what, this is not for me, there's like no incentive for them to take it offline or do something else.
Got it. You mentioned before that first stage in the user journey tends to be discoverability. Unless the user really knows what they want and types the name of that local business, most likely they are going to start with a search. So I'm connecting this with AI now, and I know for a fact that a lot of people are going to LLMs to ask questions that before they used to ask to Google. So how does that influence the way you guys go about SEO and showing up on these type of external platforms?
First, I got to say, I'll answer your question directly in a second. But first, I just got to say, the way you teed up that question, I thought you were going to ask about our Yelp Assistant. So we launched an LLM-powered chatbot earlier this year, which is, for me, it's the coolest thing because, I was giving you the gazebo example when I first started searching for it. This was when the product was in beta. We were only testing it internally, and my wife wants to build a gazebo, so trying to look for like, who do I call? Is this like a general contractor, etc.? And then, my team sends me the link to this chatbot. It was like the most incredible thing. So the difference is with the LLM powered Yelp assistant, you don't have to know the answer. You just have to tell it what your problem is. And it will ask you, like it's drawing on all of the conversations that Yelp has had, that consumers on Yelp have had with pros. It understands all the pros we have. It understands all the categories, right? Like this is very easy for AI. And so, it's starts the process with, oh, it's great. You want to build a gazebo. Is it going to be small, medium, or large? I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is the size of my yard. And they're like, okay, maybe like a medium one. Do you have a design? I'm like, I have to design these things. And they're like, don't worry about it. We'll find a designer and we'll find someone who can build it. Do you want it to be wooden or metal or this or that? I'm like, wow, I had no idea there were so many different kinds. I just want a wooden one. And so, the problems that I had in the past where I had to go and do the research and, all of that, this thing, it was like 3 minutes and I answer the questions. It walks me through it, holds my hand. It kind of provides encouragement. They're like, oh, it looks like it will look great in your backyard. I'm like, I don't know if you know that, but thank you. And then at the end of that flow, I just sit back and I get a bunch of texts from the pros because it's got all of my information. With my permission, it asks for my address because this is a job where the pro needs to come out and look at your house. And then it just gives you the answer. So, for us, and now it's launched. It really makes the experience completely different. Folks can come with a problem, and we're kind of short circuiting. So instead of going through the search, evaluate, decide, and connect, it's search and then connect, which is great. It's taken out the middle to there.
To me, Craig, I love that example. To me, it's like going to be in a hotel and going to the concierge. Like I'm already at the hotel, right? And the concierge will know, okay, we're asking a few qualifying questions. I would say, okay, you have to go to the restaurant. And by the way, I'm making the reservation for you and I'm calling the car. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? But like the best, and a step before that, right? Before the user is within your platform, I'm curious to know how you are able to put enough content out there so they can land on Yelp for the next step.
So you're asking about our SEO essentially? Is that the key?
Yeah, especially now in this new AI era. How does that impact the way you go about SEO?
So I'll share three separate thoughts which might not appear to be related, but I promise they are. The first is I'm still one of those old school PMs who believes that if you give consumers an overwhelmingly valuable experience, like they'll come back. And so we have a large installed base of Yelp users who've come to Yelp for restaurants. And when we give them a great experience, they come to us for services and then they keep coming back. So there's a large installed base, which we're very fortunate to have that we've built up over 20 years. And so part of the job is, and this was the same at Amazon, right? Like if you buy socks on Amazon, you're quite likely going to buy school supplies, right? And so this is just, you have a large installed base, give them that outstanding experience, and they're going to keep coming back. And so part of it is we're very fortunate. We have huge organic traffic, and we just have to continue driving that flywheel. The second, to answer your question specifically, as search habits are changing, we recently announced a deal with Perplexity, where we'll surface Yelp content in their local search. And as you're well aware, LLMs are phenomenal for a bunch of different types of responses, but with freshness and local, they're not as good because the responses are dated, and then they're not good with subjective responses where the source of the response is actually really, really important. And so this is where we think Yelp's content really shines, right? We've built up this database of the most amazing reviews over the past 20 years. And so we have started to license our content. We have a product called Yelp Fusion AI API. And through that product, you can pass through natural language questions. So what's a good restaurant in Florida that's kid friendly and has a patio and is open for brunch at 11. So you can pass that whole query to our API and we'll essentially return the top 3 search results with like all of the information. In the past, you had to come to Yelp to experience the value of our content, but now in this new world, we're able to export that content everywhere, which is great.
And users will still have the context around what is best for them according to the data that you have within Yelp.
Sorry, what was the question?
So the comment. So now if you are able to allow users to do a Yelp search outside Yelp, when they say best, you have a subjective definition for best for them.
Yeah, and we're also able to support the natural language processing through the API, so that it's a personal like you can tell us what best means to you, right? So exactly. I want a Spanish restaurant that has the best paella, and so we can look through all of our reviews and see how people, and then the other part is LLMs have started to be able to, you can train them to understand sentiment as well. So you can understand from a review whether someone thought paella was okay or is, oh my God, it's like the most amazing thing I've had in my life. And so we can use all of that now just to basically tailor what we respond, so that if I ask the question and my criteria are different than yours, we can essentially return a different set of results. Which I think is, by the way, like, it seems very, very like mundane in 2024, but in 2020, like, this is like mind-blowing stuff, right?
It's mind-blowing. Like, I mean, that's why I love geeking out on this, because the definition of best now, it's not just game based on certain keywords that will show up earlier on a page. It's just more contextual based on your action and other signals, and you can put that information outside your own platform. So I'm loving that approach. I know there's another AI use case you mentioned in the ProductCon online talk that you gave. It was around AI-enabled videos that will allow people to kind of enhance the type of reviews and content that they put on your platform. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yeah. So, this was essentially born from the thought that we have so much great content on the platform. People love to come to read the reviews, and we wanted to be able to show them what the experience was actually like. And kudos, this started as a hackathon project. There were a couple of really motivated engineers who built like a prototype in 2 or 3 days. And then as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've seen, because it like I was saying, it has a chance to understand the sentiment. So you can feed it all of the reviews. It understands the sentiment, and then it writes a story around that sentiment, matches it with all the pictures and videos, and then creates a video with some music, and has a good storyline. But most importantly, it gives you that experiential feel. So if you just want to quickly compare, you can watch a video. These are like 30 seconds, and you can basically get a sense of what it's like. And so we have started testing it. It might be in your feed now. If you pull up your feed, it's live for some users on iOS. Like we do with everything, we're testing multiple versions to see what is actually resonating. Is it shorter videos? Is it longer videos? Is it narration? Is it voice? Is it music? Like, we'll test like different versions of it and see what is really resonating.
It sounds like the video photo widget I see on my iPhone that shows me like some photos put together from a trip that I did with my family a few years ago and made me so happy, and then I share with my family.
The main thing is this has brought a lot of joy to my wife. She feels like justified in like nudging me to take this job and working like long evenings and nights, not looking after the kids. She's like, this is really cool. Like, who did this? And I'm like, I know a guy.
That's a very important success metric, Craig.
It is. That's my number one KPI.
Well, and I want to grab this up with a hot take. I heard you talk about embracing failure and how failure is part sometimes of the process, but you only want to fail once. So what is the biggest failure that you made at Yelp, and how did you grow up from there?
I thought you're always supposed to end things on like a positive note. No, I'm kidding. I do think failure is like really important. I'll tell you the one that pops into my head right away, because I was kind of new at Yelp and I was still building my reputation. So this one stung maybe a little bit more than others. So this is about searching for restaurants and like ordering search. So when I joined, I noticed that when you're searching for a restaurant later at night, so one night we're up at 10 or 11, and my wife said, let's get takeout. And I was looking through restaurants, and then half the restaurants were closed. And so I wrote to the team in the morning. I was like, if somebody's searching for a restaurant late at night, they probably want to order. So maybe we don't show all of the reviews for restaurants that are closed first. Maybe we sort by restaurants that are open. And I guess people were like very polite. They're like, this guy's new. We should like take his feedback. So they launched an experiment, and user engagement just tanked. Like people hated it. Like we knew instantly, this is not even close, right? It's like search metrics just like fell off a cliff. I was like, what is going on here? This seems very logical, intuitive way to think about this problem. But it turns out that a lot of people are looking for like restaurants for lunch for the next day. They're looking to make a weekend reservation. A lot of search traffic that's done at night are by people who are planning for the next day, planning for the next week, planning for a special occasion. And unlike me, in that specific moment, they're not really interested in getting food at 11 p.m. at night. And so that was that was a two-way door. It was an experiment. We launched it 50-50. It crashed. It took us 2 or 3 days. Pretty sure I lost the respect of the team for a whole week. But it was a good learning that, it was a good reminder that as a PM, even when you're passionate about product, you're not just designing for your own use case. There's millions of consumers with millions of use cases, and all of them are important.
You see, you made this end on a high note.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Craig. That was wonderful.
All right. Great to chat. Thanks for having me, Carlos.